Welcome, everyone, to Rebirth, a D&D Tale. Last we left off, our band of adventurers, the Lucky Sevens, had been investigating some things going on in the Garnet Keep and had decided upon some steps going forward. One of those steps being to turn the remains of Lagon's old village from when he was a child to a bit of a sacred place, casting a spell that would keep the surrounding area from any sort of foul intent, including raising any remains of those who had passed away in the fires back then from being raised and walking again. Another thing that they decided that they would take on as a part of their growth as a team would be to make a venture to Diamond City, the one airship port in this particular continent, and see about purchasing and setting aside some money for a personalized airship themselves. One they could use to travel throughout the rest of the world. One that they could use as a base of operations to store goods, to make as a home. Maybe for those who have very little in the way of a home now. And so, after things have been settled in Garnet Keep and things are more or less on the mend when it comes to the Obsidian Peak, the quaking of the earth has all but disappeared over the last few days that you have been in the city. The smoke coming out of the top of the mountain has all but subsided. It seems that the volcano is going back to sleep. Hopefully for a long period of time, and no other disturbances are needed. So, Diamond City, over land from Garnet Keep, is a bit of an indirect route, but can be traversed over the course of a week or two in a fast-moving cart, which is one of the ways that you have traveled here before. I don't think we actually did the travel last time. We were
we're near Bloodstone Ridge.
Bloodstone Ridge. Okay, so you're doing the other half of the travel. Okay. And so, making your way from Bloodstone Ridge is again going to take some gold or some travel means of your own, however it is that you want to get there. And since you're not in a very much of a time crunch, you can take your time if you like, if you want to spend less money. But at the same time,
we have the carriage.
You do. So the carriage is prepared for you all to make the venture southward. And so you gather all of your things once more after Lagon has finished up the ritual and everything is already settled there. You climb aboard and start the travel southward. So, during this period of time that you're on the road, very little actually interrupts your travel. What little interruptions you do have are things that you can manage rather quickly. wild animals and the occasional highway robber don't actually cause any kind of disturbance. You sooner scare them both away, given given how many of you there are in this particular this particular carriage and caravan. Nothing really seems to assail you in that way. You do run into the weather obstacles, where it is rather cold. You do run into having to set up camp and fire and everything else to be able to keep yourselves warm. But so long as you're making the appropriate stops and warming yourselves up and sheltering yourself from the cold weather, you're not really going to be slowed all that much. Not like in the mountains where it's even more treacherous. The roads are more or less clear, or at least have ruts in them that are traveled well enough that that snow doesn't tend to pile up on the roads. That travel is rather easy in that sense. But still get pretty shivery, and it's definitely very cold at night. But you all prepared well enough for that. So the things that you see along the way is in stopping at various villages along the road. None of them more than a couple of individual huts and maybe some farmland that right now is all iced over. The it's definitely very different around here than many probably would be aware of, as there's a lot of reverence for the creator gods here. And so you do see a lot of iconography and shrines and things like that along the road as well, that just little stops that travelers can make to pay homage. But yeah, a lot of what as far as the eye could see, it's flat plains that are all kind of snowed and iced over. But that is what you see along the road. Any interest in looking into anything, or just continuing on?
Yeah, look at the statues and see if I recognize them as like good gods or bad gods.
You would recognize overall that primarily the shrines in the along the roads and in the towns that you've been to have all been dedicated to the creator gods and otherwise other good entities, and demigods, heroes, things like that of a sort of good nature, for if there's a good versus evil sort of dichotomy that you're looking for. Out in the open, the destroyer gods are not really depicted. You're aware of them. You know that a lot of people are aware of them, but no one claims to worship them. It's definitely seen as very taboo. References to them only refer to their titles, such as the Chained Oblivion, the Conquering King, those sort of titles. It's mostly considered, especially here, that if you name the god, you are essentially giving them power. whether that's directly or you're submitting yourself to them or something to that effect. It's definitely very superstitious as far as feel regarding the destroyer gods. And that's pretty true across the world, really. Oh, if you're speaking, Spectre, you're... No? Oh, okay. Because I saw your mouth moving. I wasn't sure if you were speaking to us or something else.
I am, I'm also here doing perhaps just some preliminary eavesdropping.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to hear if there's any news because we're going to Diamond City.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was the title, right?
Yes.
And trying to see if there's any news coming from there or anything near the current location. Trying to ascertain rumors, what it is we might be getting into, trying to stay ahead of the curve. And thanks to the helm, I can understand them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. You're very free to understand them. Yes. Going through the Jade Forest, you're running more into like logging and farming and sort of those sort of villages along the road.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them doing business, obviously, with Diamond City. A lot of the markets that you run into, to pick up supplies, also seem to do a lot of business going through sort of the crossroads, going through the plains, and then going to the individual cities from there. But the primary rumors that you're getting about Diamond City is that let's see, I don't recall just exactly. Let me pull up my notes. I have notes regarding this. Let's see. What you do see a lot of, in traveling is that a lot of the markets, whether they're kind of mostly a logging site or anything like that, there are definitely the exchange of a lot of books and art as well. So you find a lot of, especially in cases of like religious tapestries, things like that. All of that sort of stuff is definitely very widely available. But the most prominent thing that's as far as news goes is just sort of a clash with the major rulers and maybe some other religious sects that might be there have been some hot debates in Diamond City about some of the stories and tales, as well as doctrine debates and things like that. And a lot of theologians are doing a lot of research and discovery and things of that sort. But the probably the most prominent thing being that that rumors of the cult that you had run into in Garnet Keep have started to spread. That news apparently travels very quickly, especially in a context such as this. In that it, while the creator gods are highly revered, steering away from that is cause for concern in some cases, especially with the rulership being high priests of the different
gods.
of the different gods.
Okay.
Yeah. The rulers are, very very doctrinal, where, the rule of the rule of the doctrine is also the rule of the state. And so religious law is very highly regarded in this place.
Any foreseeable complications that'll end up causing for our arrival?
As far as
My
complications go, you shouldn't really run into much in the way of complications. They're very open to those who don't practice the same religions, but they do expect some kind of awareness of the laws of nature, the laws of the Dawnfather, and things like that, which is pretty typical stuff. Where, so long as you're seen as doing good, as a broad sense, seen as doing good and not doing evil, then you won't expect to run into any complications. Lagan would probably be someone highly regarded as part of your party, because he already does sort of follow the laws of Melora, if there are any, and and he's already familiar with the culture and everything of the country as well.
Follow his lead and we should be fine.
Follow his lead and you should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. So not much we got to worry too much about the current town outside of grabbing our typical provisions and what have you.
Right.
Which I will restock.
Yeah. You shouldn't run into any complications with the law or with the rulership of this country, so long as you follow Lagan's lead. And
Fair.
While Mojo's not here to do so, he's happy to facilitate anywhere is needed. Along this road, however, through the Jade Forest, you do get rumors of a zone where magic is a little bit unpredictable. Where if you even so much as cast a single spell, like a cleric were to provide healing to someone, for instance, something else might also happen. You, having been on the underground, haven't really seen much in the way of this sort of thing. But those who are surface dwellers would find this to be not uncommon, but also not common either. It's kind of a known quantity to happen around the world, where the magic is considered wild, and in essence, sort of is a depiction of the Wild Mother herself, acting upon the land and making it strange. And one of these zones is something that you will be riding through. It's only for a couple of miles across, but it's definitely something that comes up with the one of the villages that you run through along the road.
Oh joy, I remember the last time we went through one of these.
Really? What happens? What happens?
Rune picked a flower and caused all sorts of chaos to go off for a couple minutes.
It was something so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's actually exciting.
Yeah, he unfortunately almost attacked me too in the middle of it all, but
Oh, I see.
Thankfully, it was over before he actually got the chance to.
So how do regular people just go through here? Do they just like... Do they wait until the magic subsides, or...
Vanya, so far as you know, these kinds of instances are permanent. They do not move.
Yeah, they don't move, so I guess people are just careful not to interfere too much with things inside the zone.
I see.
But definitely be careful if you go to cast anything.
Well, if I remember right, when I first came to, there was a period in which even my powers were a bit unstable. The magic that I cast. I remember that there was this feeling that things could go awry. It hasn't happened for quite some time, not since, honestly, but...
Come to think of it, I think there was also that zone that Lagan was able to fly around for a little bit. We got great joy of watching him dance in the air.
Oh, I think he had the most joy about all of us. Let's be honest. And Arya will just...
Wonder if that's going to happen again. That might be interesting to see.
I'm gonna give it some time. I think I could probably figure it out. Maybe. Maybe?
I'm presuming then that this is clearly an unnatural effect.
Giants do not simply fly.
Curiosity. Is this a common phenomenon or across different regions, or is there something else I must be illuminated to?
Are they common, Coffee?
Common enough to be a known quantity all across the world. You know that there are a couple of zones like that in the Green Rim Empire. There was a couple of zones that were in the Goyera archipelago. There's a couple of zones out in the middle of the ocean even that sailors avoid, especially with magically run ships, because it can even cause things that are enchanted to go awry. There's also zones around the world in which nothing magical functions, also darted across the world and even in the middle of the ocean. That the reason that there's a specific route through the archipelago is because it needs to avoid some of these and dead magic zones.
She'll explain that to Illyra.
So all across the world, it's magic is a finicky thing.
World below is certainly more simple in that regard.
It doesn't happen below ground.
Nothing like what you're describing. I've heard of different flora that would illuminate in the presence of certain things. Magic, certainly being one of them, but nothing to what you're describing. No, you'll end up finding oddities, but nothing quite like what you're... I'm left to end up wondering. Perhaps it's leftover here situation from the time when dragons and here giants made war with one another.
Oh, that is a
Could be.
thought. Coffee,
Mm.
is that something Arya could gander at and that she might have little insight? Would this be like some sort of residual effect from the
From the
Dragon
wars.
Giant War?
The Ancient
Yeah,
Wars.
the Ancient Wars.
Make me... Make me an Arcana check, because, yeah, this is going to be based on your knowledge of the arcane, as well as your intuitiveness.
All right, I'm pretty sure my Arcana is flat as fuck, but we'll look at... Oh no, it's a 4. Hey, all right. That's 14 sound.
It's a reasonable
Total.
hypothesis. Rune would probably be the bigger expert on that, though.
Yes, Rune was always so much more knowledgeable about these things. Whenever something like that would be brought up, he'd know immediately. Bookworm.
He would occasionally spout off a lot of different things that you would have absolutely no idea about, but be extremely passionate about it. And sometimes it would just go over your head, and maybe this is one of those things.
Certainly happened to be missing that egghead of his. No matter. It is a very interesting idea. It's even more interesting that it only happens upon the surface and no deeper.
Yeah.
If it happens elsewhere, then it's nothing I have encountered.
That's a fair statement.
In fact, just as your carriage is kind of pulling up, on the road, you do see that further ahead of you, past a village that you just left, a large span of the forest ahead of you doesn't seem to be covered in winter snow. Instead, it seems to be blossoming with springtime blossoms in this particular area. It's rumored that this is a zone in which springtime never ends. And from what you can hear and see in the distance, it does seem that it is incredibly lively with flora and fauna in the entire area. Perhaps this is a zone in which animals from all over the Jade Forest tend to come to for warmth and safe haven during the winter months. You see lots of birds. You see lots of animals. You do see lots of flowers, all of which are extremely wild growing, and that the road here even is pretty overgrown. The sort of dirt ruts that you would expect from a well-traveled road seem to be just bursting with life too. It's almost as if the road itself disappears in the midst of all of this.
Oh, what was that about not picking flowers?
Let's not. But if you want to experiment, be my guest. Be interested in see what happens.
No, I was just thinking how ironic it was.
I'd say it'd be a good hunting spot, but past experience says that wouldn't be a good idea.
It does seem to be very, very full of life. So if you did want to go hunting, it might be the place to do it.
I will definitely end up doing some investigation. Now, Coffee, just because we're still kind of discovering this, And I'm not going to end up pulling all the lore from Faerun, obviously, because this is not Faerun. So,
Right.
how familiar would Drow be with Fae? Because I'm not going to end up presuming that the same tie-in that would typically end up happening for most elves also happens here. But if it is, then would it be fair to say Alira might have a sneaking suspicion of some kind of Fae involvement in this?
In the case of the Drow, they tend to have more familiarity and probably even revere the Fae more than your typical elf on the surface, because of a similar thing that happened with the Fae, that they also went to ground in order to avoid the war that was going on the surface. And so perhaps there's even